Hello everybody and welcome to episode number 20 of Competitive Magic with the Carnies. I'm your host, Andrea Mengucci from Italy, and joining me we have Javier Dominguez from Spain.
Hello everyone.
And Anthony Lee from Australia.
Hola.
Carnies, how have you been? What did you do this weekend? Javier, did you do well in any of the showcase that happened over the weekend?
I don't think so. I actually think I did particularly bad. I just got destroyed it was Modern Pioneer. It didn't go very well. I played also a lot of challenges, but I think I went like a deep run on the Legacy one. Obviously, again, playing against a bunch of initiative decks because that's Legacy now, but I still played it. But the rest, I just lost. Like I played Vintage, played Pioneer, played Modern, and just kept losing. But we will take. I want to say something, but I got impressed by one deck, a Modern, and we will talk about that one later.
For sure. I also joined your streak of losses this weekend. On Sunday, I actually decided to play some Magic Online me as well. I played the Pioneer Showcase with Incarnation. I went 0-1 drop.
Nice.
And I follow it with the Legacy Challenge with Mono White, and I went 0-2 drop. So definitely a losing weekend for the Carnies.
It happens to all of us, though. It's good that we also talk about this. Like, you know, because Anthony wins a PTQ every weekend, but the rest of us, we actually lose a lot. Like, it's very common that we go 0-2. So, yeah, I mean, if you ever, you're like 3 weeks in a row, always 0-2ing all the tournaments, that's us also sometimes. Not Anthony, though. What did you do, Anthony, this weekend?
Well, I actually got as many wins as you guys, but that's probably because I didn't play any tournaments. So,
Yeah, that's also my strategy. That's also my strategy to avoid losses.
Did you go to any cool place, Anthony? Did you go to Sydney, or did you see any kangaroos or whatever?
Well, no, I don't think so. Though, if you're talking about cool places, that would not include Sydney, and I also didn't see any kangaroos. Wow, it really sounds like absolutely nothing happened for me this weekend. So
Okay.
It's true though. It was an absolute void.
Okay. All right. This weekend, though, next episode, I will definitely have some cool talk because this weekend I'm going to Trieste for the Legacy European Tour. So there's going to be a big event in Modern. I'll also play a big Pauper event. So lots of cool paper play for me this weekend.
Pauper paper.
I look forward to it.
Yeah, let us know next week. What how it goes, and also the Mango Cuisine pictures. Whenever you go to tournaments, I'm always looking forward for those.
Oh, for sure. I already asked to all the locals the best restaurants. I booked restaurants on Friday and Saturday, so I'm covered on that one.
What are you gonna eat? Wow. You know already which kind of food?
One is like a classic trattoria, so I'm expecting to eat some like first and second course, the classic Italian experience.
Yep.
And the second one is going to be meat, I think. It's called bracceria, and so I'm expecting to eat some very tasty meat.
Nice. All right.
But yeah, let's talk about the magic that happened over the weekend. Unlike the Carnies, some people actually managed to win some matches in the showcase. That happened to be Cascade decks, who finished first and second. Talisker, Talisker, my former teammate at the Open Teams, also happened to win split the final with Crashing Footfalls, and. The other finalist is a Magic Online grinder, Meninone, who always plays Living End and got to run as deep as the final. Very, very cool to see Meninone matchups. He played against 5 Blue-Red Murktide and dropped 1 game in total.
Is Living End ahead of Mortide? Like, it's something normal, or just like he just destroyed them because he's very good at playing the matchup? Do you know this?
So, the thing is that you have Flusterstorm, you have Spell Pierce, and of course, like, you have Pressure, you have Ragavan, which is unlike against Rhinos, where Ragavan kind of sucks. It's excellent against the Living End. I would say that I played Living End. I made a couple of leagues with Living End. The biggest challenge with this deck is actually to sideboard and balance the amount of answers. So like, Forced Negation, Grief, Mystical Dispute, or like even Endurance, I guess, with the number of like threats and Cascade and things like that. Maninone, I think, must have, found the perfect configuration, because, it's really difficult to be able to get like a lethal living end while also guaranteed to have enough counters for your opponent counter spells and things like that. I would say overall the matchup still favors Murktide, but he went like 10-1 in games, so I can't really say that.
Also,
I think that's interesting, and I'm also surprised. Like Rhinos, like it's like always there. It reminds me of Burn in the old ages, where you see on paper like the deck is like not very good, but then it is good because it keeps winning a lot. And I think Talisker decklist. You remember last week when we talked about creativity? Like there was a lot of like different versions, but at the end, the one we liked the most was the one with like more interaction, more mana lake or whatever. This one is like very lean, right? Like this is no. I mean, it has to become immense. But it's like, this necklace is not trying to do anything fancy or answer to, it's just Rhinos. Like, it just wants to attack as soon as possible, maximize the interaction, and that's it, right? I don't know. I like this deck list. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, this deck list has, a friend of mine coming to Trieste with me, he also is playing Rhinos, so he's also testing a lot the deck. I told him at first to start practicing with 4-color, because I think 4-color has the better matchup against Murktide, because you have Leyline Binding, which is so important to kill a Ledger Shredder. Here, because the problem is really Ledger Shredder, because Murktide Regent, you can bounce it with Brazen Boar or Dead Gone, but Ledger Shredder, you just stay there, lets you loot away the lands, it grows bigger than a Rhino, and of course Boar is pretty bad against it. But after all, I think in a broader metagame, just having access to Blood Moon in the sideboard, having access to just, fetching basic lands to also play around Blood Moon on your side, I think might be actually better overall. So I think that maybe for a tournament, Temur is the better choice, and as Talisker shows you, again, I really put a lot of effort on the name because he's a very good player, plays a lot of Modern, decided to play Temur over 4-color, so I think all these things definitely add up. A very interesting decision on his deck, other than the Become Immense, is Season Pyromancer, a card I honestly have never really seen lately in the Rhinos list. And I think it makes a lot of sense. Some people might come to the conclusion of, why aren't you playing Fable of the Mirror Breaker? Isn't that better? But Season Pyro lets you play around Spell Pierce and Fluster, which are very good cards against you. So that might be a reason why there's Season Pyro instead of a Fable.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Spell Pierce is everywhere.
But can we talk more about the Become Immense? Can we talk more about the Become Immense? That really stands out. I think that deserves more comment, surely.
So, Become Immense is, you see it around in Temur deck lists. I wouldn't say it's as uncommon. Become Immense is mostly here to steal a turn. So, for example, if you play against Creativity, you're able to win the turn after you make Rhinos. So, let's say on turn 3, you go for 10 power, and on turn 4, you deal 16 damage. That's often enough to win the game. So, that is basically like... I don't want to say a time walk, because obviously that's not. But against combo, in the combo mirror match might act like shorting a clock of 1. That's why I think they're good in the main deck, but pretty bad post sideboard, I think.
So Become Immense, we come from the green time walk.
Well, it's basically like how Temur Battle Rage functioned in Shadow, right?
Yeah.
I imagine. But something interesting that I think was that there was a tension in Shadow between Temur Battle Rage and counterspells, because they would often do something similar against combo decks, but it makes a lot of sense that it can't be a counterspell to do the same thing here, because you tap out to cast Rhinos, so you can't speed up your clock by holding up a Stubborn Denial or whatever. It can't be Stubborn Denial in this deck, but you get the idea. A Dispute or whatever. Because you tap out, it needs to be a card like Become Immense. So that's pretty clever. I like that. Also, maybe one day you'll Become Immense a Fury. How cool would that be?
Oh, that's one. Yeah, that's a kill. That's cool. I mean, I'm sure that happens sometimes.
Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, honestly, this is just... It's Rhinos. As Javier says, it's not offensive or anything. I still respect this deck a lot. I think it's one of the best decks in the format. And again, together with Living End, these are just such an efficient combo decks in Modern. You have all the answers, you have a very fast clock. Yeah, I mean, definitely a very good deck for a long tournament like it's the Showcase. How many rounds was this Showcase? 9 or 10? Do you know?
think 9. I don't think it was like huge,
Oh,
but I'm not that sure.
I mean, 9's huge, isn't it?
Yeah, 9 is huge. 9 is
Yeah, I
huge. No,
guess.
because I thought it was 10, but I might have been wrong.
Also, how nice is this Menino Ne guy, by the way? Can you imagine playing Living End, getting paired to Rhinos in the finals, and agreeing to split? That counts as a charitable donation, I think. He should be able to donate that, deduct that from his taxes. That's wow.
Well, they might even not know. I mean, they might just be tired, or they just also could not know. You know, like you don't know. In Magic Online, you don't know what you're playing against. So
That's true. I
Honestly, like if you lose the Darrow and your opponent asks you to split, I think you kind of accept it because, like,
suppose. Yeah, fair
in
enough.
Modern, if you're on the draw, it's always negative match.
there's no good
Yeah,
matchups,
you
huh? Yeah.
Fair.
There's bad matchups
Especially
and
if
even
you're playing
matchups.
Cascade, yeah.
Yeah.
True.
The rest of the top 8 has, kind of different decks. There's the classic Murktide Scam, Yawgmoth, some of the best decks. And then we have Tron, which doesn't really appear as one of the best decks, but it's there. Got the top 8 in this like very long and kind of prestigious event.
Keeps doing so. Tron keeps being there. It's incredible. I just love it.
It's the stock. It's the stock list from that we seen a few weeks ago with the Cityscape Leveler over Eugene the Spirit Dragon.
Yep.
And it has 3 A-Wire Might in the sideboard.
I assume it's for Hammer, I will say, but it
Yeah.
also has some applications like at Blood Moons or whatever. Like it's a answer to Blood Moon that blocks Ragavan, and it's good against Hammer. Like, I mean, I don't think you can ask for a better cyber card, I guess.
Yeah, notably
great.
now that you mentioned Hammer, no copies of Hammer in both top 8s this weekend. So if last weekend it came first and second in the challenge, this weekend is nowhere to be seen at least in the winner metagame, let's say.
Is it going down in the Mengu tiers?
No. Hammer's still great. Today, just got paired against Hammer, lost easily. I was playing Amulet. Oh, by the way, I don't know if you saw it, I trophied this morning on stream with Burn.
Yeah, the best deck ever. Best deck in terms of like, it's been there forever. It's the longest, like, long tier 1 or tier 2, whatever deck in Modern. It's been there forever.
Also,
Yeah, I think
also it's so cheap.
Yeah.
It's so cheap.
It is
Usually
MTG Finance.
expensive. Oh, because they reprinted all the fetches. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
It's like on Magic Online, it's 100 ticks. Like, come on.
For a modern deck, it's
100 ticks.
pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, Tron
All
also
right.
must be kind of cheapish, but maybe not that much.
Yeah, maybe.
So many comments.
Speaking of, there's Boseiju though. That's very expensive.
Okay.
Let's speak about the deck that we haven't mentioned in the top 8, which is definitely the bigger innovation of the week, which is Jeskai Breach without Urza Saga. So this trend started a few weeks ago when Jeskai Breach without Urza Saga won the PTQ. And that list was very weird though. He had like Baral, Manamorphose, Remand, so it definitely wasn't a normal list. Whereas this that Jaco Pablo and another person, Quabat Chia, made the top 8 with is instead a Breach deck without Saga with Dragon's Rage Channeler. And even in the case of Quabachi, they don't even play Grape Shot or Tassa's Oracle. So it's just a value breach. It doesn't actually win the game the same turn, or rather, you can bolt your opponent, but you don't have a clean kill spell. Exactly. You don't have a combo kill. So I think this is the biggest innovation right now. We might just enter a world where Jeskai Breach doesn't play Saga, Grinding Station, MOCS Ember anymore. What do you think about this, Javier?
Well, I was impressed by this deck in the tournament itself, and we also saw it on the Shadow decks. I think last week we commented about like a little bit about like how the Shadow might be good with the Breach. Yep. So now, I mean, I'm not sure if the Shadow shell or this shell is better. I have only tried this shell, the Jeskai shell, and I got like a 4 or whatever. Like, I was impressed by the deck against it. I'm playing with it. It felt like, wow, this deck is just good. Like, it's so functional. It does what it's supposed to do, and Breach doesn't need a lot of noise to be a combo kill. Like, they're at 11, you tap 5 mana, you win the game because you have a ball there, and that's it. And I think that's very clean. Then Teferi is very smart in this kind of decks, but I'm not sure Teferi is better than Thoughtseize, because Thoughtseize is a good card, and that by definition puts cards into graveyard. But like, I think Mango might be right. Like, I think we're gonna see more and more fair breach decks, and I could see this kind of deck is fighting with Blue Red Martet for the spot, because they're both like Ragavan, Shredder, and DRC decks, and I think one of them is probably better than the other. And I mean, for once, I don't think it's necessarily Blue Red Mortite. So I will probably, if I had like a tournament or whatever, I will probably keep an eye on these breach decks, because they are like not very easy to attack. If you think about it, like you put like cards that are good against breach, well, definitely they're not good against Ragavan or Shredder, right? And it's not like they need breach to win, because they're like kind of a Blue Red Mortite, but instead of Mortite, they play the breach and that's it. So it's not like they're making concessions. The sky is the limit. Like, this is being Blue Red splash white, but it could be like, Shadow. It doesn't even have to play blue, depending on how you build it, right? Like, you could have like Fables or whatever. I am not sure, but I think Breach as just a fair card that just wins the game with like burn spells, bolts, or as Mango said other weeks, like if you go like DRC bubble, you just gotta draw like 6 cards and you're gonna win the game regardless, right? So I think we can see this a lot. And for me, playing some cubes, I also felt like some games where I had like semi-combo decks with Breach, where I would just cast Breach, play 3 spells, and the card was just great, even though I couldn't combo with it. And I think that's also something that people thought making these innovations. And I think I'm impressed by it. Like, the last time I was so impressed in Modern was when creativity was starting to be popular. So I wouldn't be surprised if this trend happens again, where breach decks actually go to, like, become like tier 1s or whatever, the same way creativity did.
In the preliminary that you forward with, were you playing with Grapeshot or without?
I played without Grapeshot because I was feeling like the strength of these innovations was the fact that this deck could, be consistent and just win the game in a combo way without any combo card. So I went with the one without the combo cards, of course, and see how much, you kind of stretch it. I just never missed the combo cards. Like, they were just, I just beat creativity or whatever. Like, I beat some decks by just bolting them.
Yeah. I've also played a lot of Breach recently. I played this Jiska version that you did well with. I also tried Blue-Red Murktide, cutting Murktide for Breach. 3 Breach instead of 3 Murktide. So I think the big changes about this deck isn't necessarily the white splash. I mean, Prismatic Ending is nice because it lets you exile annoying cards like Unlicensed Nurse or Sanctifier Invec that, Red maybe has a harder time dealing with. But I think the biggest change is that the Jiska list that you're playing doesn't play Counterspell. And that might be something I don't really want to do in Modern. Like, especially when first and second deck are, decks that are obviously weak to Counterspell. In this showcase, obviously not in general. I like also Yawgmoth, Tron. There's definitely decks where just having Counterspell instead of 3 Spell Pierce might be... I don't know. I feel like I'm a little bit safer if I join a Modern tournament with Counterspell rather than not.
Play the Grixis Shadow Breach one then, because that has Drown in the lock. That's pretty good against Cascade. So, you can still... There's nothing about Breach that says you can't play counters, right? So, I mean, they can be a little awkward, but you can.
For sure. So my problem with that Shadow is just... I don't know, but I don't feel like it's a good card anymore. Just way too many lightning bolts, or just decks that burn in general, just building your mana base and just shocking yourself just for your payoff to be a creature that, dies to Prismatic Ending, or just, dies in general, as well as your matchup against burn becomes worse. I don't know. Every time I play with that Shadow recently, I don't really feel the power of the deck.
One thing though, I don't think, like, if I had to play burn, I would rather play Shadow than Jeska. Like the card that Shadow is actually sick against burn. Like, the card's just sick good there. Like, they just cannot execute the plan. Like, the mana base from Shadow is not that much different from the mana base from Jeska. Like, it's very similar. You can actually build it similar, whatever. Like, you take some more damage, but it's not like super, it's not like extreme. You don't play like the lands that deal 3 damage. Like, I think Shadow...
Yeah, no, my thing was that if you play Shadow, you kind of have to shock yourself, like, even if you don't have Shadow in your hand.
Why?
Whereas...
No, you don't.
I know
you don't.
I know that you don't, but, like, you don't play Mountain, maybe, you don't play Island.
I think you have to play Mountain. I think Shadow, I think this is misconception of Shadow, where you just have to go low on life for Shadow to be good, but that's not how Shadow decks actually operate. You have the option to do so when you want to, but I will say, I don't quite often. I just don't shock myself in playing Shadow. When I did play a lot of Shadow. Like if you pick up Shadow, especially in a deck with Shadow and Breach, I will suggest thinking twice on whether to fetch Shockland Pain to Life or not. I will often actually just hold, because if I don't know if I'm going to fetch or not, like for Shockland, I can just hold the mana if I'm not using it. I understand what you say, Mengu, but I'm not fully agreeing here because of, you can just still go for basics, especially if you play Breach, of course. Yeah,
I mean, that might be maybe the way I play. It's bad, but I feel like, every time I play Shadow recently, I never really felt the power, and that's the general feeling. Also matched with the results that don't really show that Shadow doing well recently.
The way I would explain it, which maybe would be an easier way to frame it, is that you can wait for your opponent to shock you, and if they're not going to shock you, then how are they going to win the game? Right? So just let them do something. So the key with beating Burn as Shadow is to make it so that they have to do something, and also that if they do something, they're going to lose to Shadow. So when you play Shadow, your game plan against Burn should be that. Like, you want to pincer them, more or less.
You don't play life, you play Taplands with Shadow and Saga, you play Taplands. And I think it's with Breach, I think Shadow and Breach, they might actually fit perfectly, because Shadow is a card, like if the game goes fast, Shadow is just like the best creature ever. Like if the game is like super fast on the phase, whatever. And if the game goes slow, that's where Breach shines. So it's actually like they actually pair together maybe better than I thought they would. That's what I want to play next in Modern. Because Shadow was weak when, like they kill the shadows or whatever, or you cannot play them because you go burn, like you play some 3/3 because you don't want to go lower in lives or whatever, and they kill the shadows because they're not very good, and then you're like, well, you have not much to do because you don't have Lotus anymore. But Breach is maybe there to save the day.
It covers that angle again. Like you need to have multiple angles covered as mid range. So
also Shadow is a little bit more aggressive. Shadow also attacks more than Jeskai, I think. Like the Shadow has like an inherent aggressive element also there. So I assume the kills with Breach and Bolt will be easier in a deck like Shadow. Also, Tatis protects Breach as well. So there's a lot of possibilities here.
I think two interesting topics that we might explore a little bit more with Breach is that with cutting Urza Saga, MOCS Ember, Grinding Station, you become better against the cyber hate that your opponent brings against you. Like, for example, Wear Tear or Force of Vigor doesn't Stone Rain you anymore, or Blood Moon doesn't Stone Rain you anymore.
Yeah, I mean, they're quite bad, right? Like, I mean, if Force of Vigor against a deck that literally only has Breach as target, that's pretty bad. Like, also because Breach can respond, like they can still respond, go consider, like there's like you can cast your hate card and they still 3 cards up. That's not acceptable. Like, sideboarding against this deck, I found it like very hard in the tournament. I was like, well, I mean, what am I supposed to do? Because if I attack the creatures, they can breach me. If I attack the breach, they can just ram me out. It's very hard. Like, I don't know. Yeah, that's okay.
Multiple angles, I guess. Yeah,
it's a multi-angle deck for sure. Yeah.
But on the other side, you don't have Urza Saga, which is sometimes just an excellent tool to fight the graveyard hate, like Endurance or Unlicensed Earth. You just go Saga, make tokens, and then Shadow Spear Equip, win. So, I don't like Urza Saga decks, mid-range Urza Saga decks, but this is not necessarily it, because it's paired with just a wonker combo.
Yeah, I haven't missed Saga. Like, I definitely haven't missed Saga, because the early game of the deck is the same as Blue-Red Morted. It just happens to change the late game for a late game that's a little bit better against interaction, even though it's obviously like less fast. Like, if you play against Tron, Morted is so much better than Breach for obvious reasons. But I think against decks that can actually deal with a Mortite, I think if Mortite is a back to beat, this deck is like probably better to pick it up, because if Mortite is good, decks will try to beat Mortite, and this is the same cards but it's different finishers.
Yeah. So one more important thing also is that there's 4 Ledger Shredder. I would say it's about a month since I've started playing 4 Ledger Shredder in Murktide, and I never looked back. I think Ledger Shredder is great. It's better than Murktide Regent actually, and I think part of the decks, this part of the reason why this deck succeeds is because it's able to also pick up this, Shredder Ragavan Channeler package, which is very familiar to Blur and Murktide. So I would say that
you're confident on 4 Shredder, because I've seen a lot of in Twitter people discussing this is good, this is bad. So your stance is you think 4 is better.
In Blue and Murktide for sure. I don't want to talk for Breach, but yeah.
No, Breach is new, but yeah, okay, good to know.
Yeah, I think it's just so important against the Cascade decks. In the mirror match, Ledger Shredder is amazing. I was afraid against Hammer, but also that's been very good there, even post sideboard, especially with the Engineered Explosives on 1.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
Yeah, you can go Shredder Explosives. Sometimes it happens, if you don't have a third land, you do that. Overall, I think you can't be sometimes the Murktide Regent is better than Breach. For example, if you only have 4 cards in your graveyard, you can cast a Murktide, whereas you cannot cast a Breach. Or, I don't know if it's been clunky for you as well, but sometimes I have Breach and I don't have Bubble, because you don't draw your Bubble, and Breach is it's not great. I feel like it happened to me for sure that I had Breach in my hand and it was bad, even without Graveyard 8, because I didn't have a Bubble, and maybe you take... you don't want to spend 3 mana for a Lightning Bolt. And so I think by playing 4 Breach, you're a little bit more clunky. You have a little bit more of a... your mana curve is just jammed on 2 mana. But on the other side, you have a better late game. So I think there's definitely ups and downs, and I think maybe playing a split... I'm mostly here talking about the Murktide versus Breach in Blue and Murktide.
Yeah, it could be actually try. It could be a split.
You have a lot of card selection. It's fine, I think. I mean, you literally talked about having 4 Ledger Shredder, and Murktide has so many card selection spells anyway that I think it's fine to play 4 of them. And having 4 also means you can play a medium one in between as well. It's more okay to just play a Breach that draws 2 cards or whatever if you have more to go over the top later on anyway. So I think 4 makes sense.
The problem of a Breach that draws 2 cards, if you don't have Bubble, is that you need 4 mana, which, you try to avoid.
I was impressed by the Breach on 4 mana killing 2 creatures, like Bartered in Blood.
Yeah.
I found the Bartered in Blood Breach mode pretty good for a fail case, which is you don't have Bubble, but you have Bolt and Heat, and kill the Ragavan, kill the Shredder. This happened to me a few times, and it was this is not bad for a combo card, compared to Grinding Station or whatever. Not obviously great game winning, but good enough. You still kill 2 creatures with 1 card, even though you string the favor or whatever. But I think that's at 4 mana Breach starts being good, and a 5 is great, and at 6 just often wins the game.
At this weekend, I am locked in playing Murktide in Trieste. I might play maybe 1 copy of Breach over the 3rd copy of Murktide. I don't think I'll be able to test it, but I think I might do that.
Yeah, imagine just having 1 off. They never know what's going on. Just cast the Breach game 1, then you separate it out. Yeah, 1 is the best number for breaches because it's impossible to react to. What are you gonna do?
I feel like I would look to cut something else though, but I think Murktide is too important in the matchups where it is good. Maybe you can find some other card in air quotes for the grindy matchups that you can cut for a Breach.
I don't know about that, Anthony, because the matchups where Murktide is more important is actually almost the same matchups where Breach is at its best. I think.
Really, I thought Murktide was more important when they don't interact enough. You play against you or something. Maybe those decks are weak to remove.
No, I don't think so, because those decks. You have already the package of Shredder, Ragavan, and Channeler. If you play Tron, your game plan is mostly just ride these guys into victory. Murktide is P plan or whatever, but ideally just go Ragavan, Shredder, Spell Pierce, counter spell, win the game. It's against blue-white control or whatever. Or I guess Rhinos, decks like that where games go long, you have big creatures or whatever, you change your sources, or Murktide is good, I think. And Breach also good there.
Also,
that's reasonable. I
think that Murktide fights better Graveyard Hate than Breach does. So, for example, against Sanctifier and Vec, Unlicensed Earths, I think you can easily play Murktide regardless, whereas Breach, obviously, it's gonna suck. And against Endurance also. So, overall, I think I don't like to go all in Breach if you're playing Murktide. If you're playing this Jeskai version with Teferian Prismatic Ending, which is, I don't know, I feel like it's basically Murktide, but without Murktide. So, yeah. I still definitely, I think this is definitely the biggest change that's approaching Modern. Maybe from this week on, we will find out if Cascade Breach, one of the best decks in the format, will actually have a big shakeup in the deck building, or if actually the version with Urza Saga was the best one.
Yep, we'll see. Who knows? I'm gonna go and say the kind of decks are here to stay. I could be wrong, but for me, this is gonna be the new creativity where bridge decks with fair cards are just gonna be around for a few months. That's my personal bet. That's my personal bet.
I mean, I don't really know because I don't follow Modern well enough to make an informed judgment as to whether they're going to stay. So I'm just gonna follow Javier on it. But what I will say is that I would enjoy it a lot if they were good, because the times when I have enjoyed Modern. When decks like Shadow are, particularly good, and if Breach is what's gonna make that happen, then I would be very pleased. So fingers crossed. I hope you're right. You're probably right.
Okay.
And I hope so.
Yeah. I also want to mention one more Modern deck, and then we can move on. It's Dredge. Dredge made a comeback with Soul deck, coming second on the Sunday challenge. I also streamed with Dredge, and I was very impressed. Mostly because, of course, it is a great matchup against all the mid-range decks that are popular now, I guess, unless it's Rakdos Scam. And so, yeah, if you are a Dredge guy, Dredge is back on the map, and his list is, kind of the classic list that you expect. There's 2 Tom Scour, which is not really a very common card, a blue mana mill 5. But outside of that, I think Dredge players are just... Yeah, your deck it's probably back on the Modern meta game. I think.
Isn't it the opposite? Don't you not want to play Dredge when once Dredge is back on the map? That's the last time I want to play Dredge. I want to play Dredge when no one knows that Dredge is on the map. Dredge players, put all your Dredge decks away, I think.
Until 3 weeks from now, yeah.
Yeah, go hide in the shadows again like the cockroaches. Run away.
Yeah, I suspect Anthony might not like Dredge also. We're going to make a list of things Anthony does not like that we know in the podcast. I will one day make the list.
It's going to be a long one.
Yeah. Okay.
Professional hater Anthony Lee.
Exactly.
All right. The winner with Scam was playing 4 Dotty Voidwalker main deck, 4 Leyland of the Void sideboard.
Yeah, it was like a good matchup for Dredge. Yeah?
Yeah, the final was not very close. Also, it's like 2 Night's Whispers, which is a nice card.
It's a fine card, right? It's basically Pushman Expressive Iteration. So
yeah, it's Expressive Iteration in black. All right. Well, are we ready to move on to the next format?
We are.
Or do you have anything else to say? Okay. So. As we said in the last podcast, we aren't going to talk about Pioneer until the Pro Tour Philadelphia, where Anthony and Javier are competing. I will be rooting from home for them and for everyone who's playing Enigmatic Incarnation, which will still the deck of my heart. But yeah. Let's move on to Standard, which is a format I am getting closer and closer to because of the regional championship qualifier. No, regional championship. Sorry, that is happening. I actually built 2 decks in paper, not 1 but 2. I beat the Grixis deck from Jabberwocky, and I beat the mono white control deck that's going on with Wandering Emperor and the Wending Announcement and etc. So I'm here to listen. What do you have to tell me about Standard? Anthony, what happened in Standard this weekend?
Soldiers. There's soldiers everywhere now. And I mean, Soldiers has always been a deck that's been reasonably competitive, but it's never quite been at the top of the format, but it has really surged there this weekend. That's the big takeaway, I think.
All right. And so many soldier decks. On Sunday, there's 5 soldier decks in the top 8, with 3 of them in the top 4. Both soldiers took down both the challenges. I don't see any more Grixis. Only one Grixis, and it's the classic standard grinder mocked. Did Grixis fell out the format? Did I build a deck that's not good anymore?
It's hard to tell, right? It's tricky.
Well, I definitely wouldn't say that Grixis is not good anymore. That's very extreme from one weekend. Also because, I mean, naturally, if there are a lot of soldiers taking up the slots, there's not as many slots left for other decks. So it doesn't mean that every single deck is bad that isn't soldiers. Well, at least I would certainly not assume so. Yeah, so I guess we can talk a little about, well, where did Grixis go and why is soldiers here, I suppose. That seems like a reasonable place to start. Go ahead, Javier.
Okay, well, I have my theories, about why this could happen. So what's exactly the question, Mengu? What happened to Grixis?
Exactly. I see a couple of Rakdos decks. So, did they turn into Rakdos because of a better matchup against the soldiers, I'm assuming?
Yeah, so for first, one thing about these challenges, though, is a large percentage of these players are playing 2 queues on this on these challenges. So decks that are very grindy, very complicated are less appealing for, in terms of being chosen. Like if you're going to play 2 tournaments or 3 at the same time, a deck like Soldiers is way more, it's easier to pick up and play 2 games at the same time. There's a super grindy 25 turn per game grindy deck that's super hard to play. So one thing, yeah. So Grixis are, you look at, you look at the mock deck list. It's a little bit stockish, whatever. But these decks are quite cannibalized already. They are very good for the grindy long type of game. They're main deck Bankbuster / Invoke Despair based, which is the best thing you want to do, you can do if you're going to play an attrition game. If you're going to win a super long card advantage game, you need these cards because they're the best top decks. But of course, they actually suck against soldiers. You could think this Grixis deck is good against soldiers because if you cast removal into Corpse Appraiser, you're winning the game most of the time. But reality is you have so many clunky cards that you need to compete against the soul decks that you actually become bad against the soldiers deck. And I think that's also something that happens against Red. There's also the Sheoldred dilemma where Sheoldred is very good against the soldiers deck, but also not as good against it's actually bad against the grindy decks with Overthrow. But overall, I think these decks went too far in order to beat themselves, which was something they needed to do back in the day, right? Because it was 5 Grixis in every top 8 2 months ago, whatever. So it makes sense for these decks to do this. But now I think it's the other way around. And I think we probably will see Grixis decks using the mana curve having more good interaction, less negate spell pierce, Bankbuster type of effects, and more more removals and more go for the throws, which is probably the best removal you can have. And MOCS has 2, for example, that's the format just switched so much that I think the deck needs to become a little bit of what it was at the beginning of the format.
Yeah, a bit of
that's
what.
Yes.
Yeah. I think that makes
so you're
sense.
saying that the deck list that I built my deck first time, which was from Jabberwocky, was in the old meta game. So it had 2 negate main deck, 3 Wandering Mind.
Yeah.
No copy of Sheoldred. So that was for the old meta game.
Look at the Soldiers deck. It's literally 24 lands, 34 creatures, and 2 only to sleep out the back as only targets for negate. If you play negates against the deck with 34 creatures, you're not good, this deck you need to adapt every week, and to do that you have to be working on the standard or whatever. So it's not a surprise for me that more dedicated grinders can actually play that. But other than that, it's just easier to just go pick up soldiers or whatever, or pick up the deck you want, because a deck like Grixis, you need to adapt it a lot week by week. I'm not talking about cutting 1 negate for 1 make disappear. I'm talking about changing 5 to 10 cards or even 15 cards with your main deck and cyber. You have to change your deck every week or every 2 weeks. And that's a lot of, it's a complicated business. But I think if we have a super important tournament now, I will expect those decks to actually come on top, but they will need to be worked on.
They need a lot of work. I think
exactly.
A lot of people kind of characterize, I think a lot of people mischaracterize mid-range decks as kind of being piles of good cards, which, I mean, they do have to be comprised of mostly good cards. But there's so many good cards nowadays that can take a lot of different forms. So a lot of people, for example, would just think, well, Sheoldred's a really good card, and Grixis is a deck of good cards, so I should put the really good card in my deck. But as we can see, even a card that's as strong as Sheoldred is highly contextual, right? It went from being format dominating to completely unplayed to where it is now, right? Which is where we are now. And Soldiers comes back and, now we have to put this card back in our deck. So, and I think that's typical of standard. The decks are just, they do have to be all good cards. But you have so many options that you have to change from week to week. So I think every time you like copy a list, you should probably just get like a pile of cards that could go in that deck, because it's going to change by the time your cards arrive, honestly. So yeah, when you say like old meta game, like that's not even that old. That was like no, I don't even know if it was 2 weeks ago. You know that this stuff started with the Wandering Minds over the Sheoldreds. Was that about 2 weeks ago, Javier? Does that sound about
three,
right?
I mean, I think it was three, maybe 3 or 4. I'm not sure because I think it started with the MOCS Showcase Challenge Final, whatever. It was like 1 month. I'm not even sure.
When we say that it started, you know, like when it really.
It definitely. It was not
like
half a year for sure.
Yeah. So yeah, you just have to be ready to adapt all the time if you're going to play a mid-range deck like Grixis. I think that's something very important for people who are getting into standard this season or whatever. You know, like you should be aware.
Black does that. Black, like if you identify counterspells as bad because they're not good against soldiers, well, now Rakdos becomes the obvious direction. Not because the mana base becomes much better, because it doesn't. Like it's a little bit only. It's just because you simply like there are no other blue cards that are very good. Like Corpse Suppressor is kind of good, but it's if you don't want counterspells, you probably don't want to play Corpse Suppressor. So that's a reasonable direction, I think.
Yeah, I was exactly going to ask that when I was asking, since Soldiers is so popular, should you cut blue and play Rakdos?
Exactly, but it's Rakdos also with like, you know, like if you look at the Rakdos decks, they're still a little bit anti mid-range decks. Like they're still a little bit heavier when they play like 4 invokes or whatever. I think they can still be lower, but then they will lose the mirror matches. So it's like this very dedicated balance. They're better against the soldiers deck. Like if you look at the CRK1, it has main deck Flesh Warrior, you know, like, which is like like a very good card against soldiers or whatever. I think if those decks play a little bit lower on the ground, they will probably just have a very good matchup against soldiers, but also will probably lose horribly against the mono white slow deck or whatever. Yeah. It's this kind of dance where you have to try to even out everything.
You start to get also, it's about things too.
Exactly.
Like
there's also a good recipe. Like this is a good situation for all decks that actually were pushed out by Grixis to be back in the menu. Like, you know, Esper came back for a week, but it could happen to come back again. Even Jaunt decks, whatever, that were bad, and then, you know, like like when there's a top deck in the format for like a month, especially in a format as small as a standard, when the deck starts to, you know, disappear or forced to evolve again to the previous version, there are some decks that were not like that good against it, but good against the rest that could come back. I think this is a good moment for decks like that to maybe come back.
A couple of questions. All right. First one is super easy. Why do you think there's 3 go for the throat, 1 Infernal Grasp, and not just 4 go for the throat? Is it only for Reckoner's Backbuster, or are there some artifacts in the format to kill?
Still Seraph.
Okay, still Seraph. Perfect. And the second question is, since the Soldiers deck plays basically no artifact or enchantment, should Mono White still play Lauren in the main deck? Because I see everyone just playing 3 Lauren in the main deck.
That's very tricky because, I mean, if you play Mono White, it's because you actually think Mono White is decent, right? And if you play Mono White Mirror and you play Bankbuster, your opponent kills yours, you're going to lose. Like, and you play Restoration and they're going to play another Lauren or whatever. I think that will only be true if Mono White disappears out of the meta. It becomes like way worse because Lauren is just so good against the mirror match and also so good against the Fable Bankbuster decks that I think Lauren just happens to be too important for this deck, even though it's bad against soldiers. Like the rest of the Mono White deck is actually acceptable against soldiers. Like it doesn't have that many dead cards. And Lauren, while it sucks, it's not as bad as the as Negates. Yeah. But it could play a less number of Laurens, but at least it does trade with a 1-drop or whatever. But I think as long as soldiers doesn't like super dominate the format, I think you have to play Lauren because it just for me, being so important in the mirror match, especially with Sarah Paragon, where you can just replay it or whatever if it dies and just kill like another announcement. There's always targets there, and some of them like Restoration, you need to deal with them because otherwise they get a creature and a Bankbuster. So I will be glad to think Lauren is too good to not play.
Yeah, you shouldn't be averse to playing playing a card that might be weak in some matchups because, for example, I don't think you would have asked that question about main deck Spell Pierce, but that isn't really any that different to Lauren, right? Or even if we look at modern, like no one is like, why would you main deck Fatal Push that's blank against a bunch of decks? That's just not. I think the idea of what is a main deck card or sideboard card is often a bit overblown So, for example, we see formats where like Ether Gust and Magma Spray were similar in terms of their main deck applicability, but one was perceived as much more extreme than the other, which doesn't really make a lot of sense. So I think, just because a card calls out specific types or colors or whatever doesn't mean that it's not necessarily a main deck card. It's just about the metagame. So I think that's something to think about in the future.
Yeah, but also for me, the fact that the cards, like, I mean, since the plan against mono white, like soldiers against mono white, is used to trade all the sources and win with the bigger cards, I think the body of the Lauren is actually, like, the fact that it's not a dead...
particularly, like, not blank. If
Lauren could... let's say Lauren couldn't block, for example.
Mm-hmm.
I think that will be enough maybe to put it out. Like sometimes with mono white, you just need a body to put a counter on with the Emperor. You know, like it's not that hard for that kind of things.
Yeah,
you know,
team up with someone to crew a Bankbuster. It's like
yeah. For me, being bad but like not completely super dead, I think it does make a difference.
Yeah, it's a little trickier for mono white because it's not like it has a Blood Tithe Harvester and Fable where it can be like, well, that card sucks, so I'm just going to go get a new one. So the bar is higher for different decks, obviously. Or a fourth breach.
And
go on.
one last question about mono white. Do you think it's better to play with the Restoration of Engajo or without? Because I see the deck lists are split.
I do think Restoration is good because, like, it's good in the meta matches because it makes Bambusters better. It gives you some protection against the Invoke in terms of, like, when you try to snowball the announcement and, you play announcement, the Restoration, and the Invoke. So you actually even a little bit of the Invoke impact and also protect the wedding announcement. And, like, the card's also fine against the Soldiers, where you can, like, 3-4 is a reasonable body. Well, if you go, like, March of the Wall of Light, it's better to have removal, but I think it's the best way to approach this kind of board matchups is just to be able to, have a big board that attacks well and, close the games or whatever. You dominate the battlefield. So I think Restoration, I just think it's a good card. I don't know what Anthony thinks about this.
I like Restoration in general. Like, every time I play like a grindy mid-range deck against it, I always find that it always gets my opponent a remarkable amount of value, and sometimes it constrains my plays. Like, I would really like to spend my mana killing something this turn, but I can't because it's going to just let you return it with the Restoration. So sometimes it's irritating in that way. I do think there's a chance it will become a little worse in the very near future because, I mean, it's fine against Soldiers, but it can be slow or awkward, more so than your other 3-drops, particularly because of Thalia. And sometimes
That's
like the
true.
3-4 is a little too slow to show up. But also because I would expect Esper to get better now that there's less Grixis. And Restoration against Esper can be really awkward because of Denic. So, yeah.
True. Do you think Still Seraph is better then? Like against Still Seraph, which is a card you could play against, like instead of the Restoration. Do you think it's better against Soldiers, but it will be too much worse maybe against Invokes?
Yeah, so I think it's specifically much worse against Grixis, although I kind of like Steel Seraph against Esper, so because I think a bunch of the modes are relevant there. I think Vigilance is surprisingly useful against them, not only because of making something immune to the Wandering Emperor, but the flying can also be quite a big deal in clocked boards. And yeah, I don't know. Maybe Steel Seraph will be better in the near future, but then I could see it rotating over to Restoration after that, like in not that much time. So.
Yeah, I mean, for this weekend in Magic Online, Still Seraph was better because there was like a lot of Soldiers in the high tables. But if for example for next week you expect the black-red decks to actually adapt, then just play a bunch of removals and become less invokes and become good against the Soldiers one, then if you expect this to happen, then Restoration is much better. So I guess once again it's metagame positioning, but it's a very good question, man. I'm still defaulting towards the Restoration, but this is a situation where also maybe a split could have some merits. Like Seraph also not very good in multiples, so maybe also that.
Yeah, I think that happens a lot in Standard, right? The cards are like both, like I said, we just have so many good options that you end up splitting them as a hedge. And it's quite
That's the Hazoret Chandra lesson.
Yeah, basically. Yeah, exactly.
They're great. They have the same cards. You just split them because you have diversity. Yeah, I mean that's a lesson for real.
Yeah, I mean, it also leads to a lot of the classic Standard thing where you have one or two main of each, one or two of each in the main, and then in the side you have the other one. And then swap to all of one after board in various matchups. One
more thing to add about this also is we talk a lot about this Shieldred thing before. If you remember which podcast it was, we talk like I don't know, like a lot of minutes about exactly why to play Shieldred or not, like many things. I think that's something also, if you're interested into that, I think it was like
yeah. Let me double check. It was episode 16. Episode 16,
Okay.
and if you skip to the standard portion, I think a lot of people found that interesting as well. A lot of people, the feedback they gave us was that they enjoyed that section, and I do think it might be useful to people whether or not they're currently playing standard. So,
but do not skip the parts. They're all good. You know, you never know when you're gonna have any kangaroo joke.
Sure, but I mean, I can understand
any corner
why.
in the podcast.
Yeah.
So, or any Italian joke
Yeah,
or
of
whatever.
course.
So you never know.
just
You have to be aware. Yeah.
So yeah, revisit that episode 16, the standard section. If you're curious about Shieldred and its presence or absence or whatever else, revisit that.
Yeah, standard. I mean, I'm glad Mengu is jumping into standard because I think it's a very interesting format now. Also, the gameplay is cool. It's just like like very mid-range piles or aggro against like decks that become control, and the sideboarding changes. I think it's very good, and it's being also cool to follow the evolutions of the format as well.
I know. I always feel like I'm learning something when I'm really paying attention to standards. I'm happy about this. So good to have Mengu back on board. Welcome back.
Yeah, I also bring some of the questions that maybe you give it for granted, and I'm still new to it.
Absolutely.
No, that's very good also because sometimes, exactly. I mean, it's not like you take for granted because sometimes you don't even think about it. You see a card and you're like, sure, whatever. But then you ask the questions and we have to think through why we like the cards, and sometimes doing that you realize maybe I don't think that way, and that's very good. That's very good questions.
I have one last question, and then we can move on. It's unlicensed Earths. Why some people playing unlicensed Earths in the sideboard? Is there any Reanimator deck, Graveyard deck?
So the biggest reason for unlicensed Hearths before was as a hate card against the Haughty decks, and those decks have kind of vanished, so you don't really need Hearths as much anymore.
What card is it? Sorry?
Haughty Djinn. Like the deck that Julian Wellman played at Worlds, the
blue decks with Djinn.
Yeah. Haughty Djinn, the one that's Enigma Draker plus Goblin Electromancer stapled together.
Yeah, or mono
so you exile the cards and the Djinn is words. I understand.
And also
or whatever.
Or Tolarian Terror. It's really rough.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
In Pauper I play for Red Cup Progenitus for the blue-black deck, so I guess
actually it's very similar. Unlicensed Hearths is a little bit better though.
It's like very... I mean, that deck will actually... I mean, we cannot know how good this deck would be, but every time it gets a little bit played, then Hearths come back and just Hearths comes back and then the deck is over. Yeah, exactly.
If you're wondering why it disappeared, it's because of Soldiers. I think it's just not that good against aggressive decks. But if Soldiers gets chased off and Grixis starts to take over the format again, maybe it's time for Haughty Djinn to come back.
But also, Hearths doesn't get played. It's very.
That's true. You get a narrow window.
That's a lot of ifs. It's 1 week Dredge style.
Okay, are we ready to move on to the next format?
We are. Is it the format of the people?
It's not.
Yet. Not okay.
It's Legacy, where something extraordinary happened. I think that honestly, just very rare to happen. It is that Mono White Initiative was more played and had a better win rate than Blue Red Delver.
Well, I mean, it is strange in terms of history, but it's we've been seeing this for weeks already in the podcast. It's the best deck. It's but I understand what you're saying.
I don't think in the whole 22, there was ever a point where Delver wasn't the most popular deck.
I think since Miracles, there's never been a situation where Delver was not the most popular deck, right? It's been literally ages in Magic, I don't know, 8 years or whatever. It's been.
Also, if you go to MTG Goldfish, Mono White Initiative is above Blue Red Delver, which also I don't think anybody else has ever been above Blue Red Delver in the last time.
That's how you can tell the format, is dominated by a deck. Yeah. I mean, it is there. The initiatives are there. That's.
It's actually even more than
Sunday,
it looks, right? Wow, I just realized.
What's that?
It's even more than it looks because it says Mono White Initiative at the top, but then it also separated Naya Initiative and Boros Initiative. Those really should count as part. So the number's bigger than it looks. Wow.
I mean, in the small in the MOCS, it was like top 4 for initiative decks. Like that's like
Whoa.
that's how it goes.
That's really hard in
Oh, in
Legacy.
the Legacy Challenge, in the Legacy Challenge on Sunday, the top 4 was 4 initiative decks, and then it was a fifth one in the top 8, which of course couldn't top 8 because you got a mirror match. But yeah, I mean, we've been saying this for a long time. Also, I went, I bought all the cards for Initiative a while back. I never got to play them in paper. I decided on Monday to do like an hour drive to go to my FNM, not FNM because it was Monday, but like to local game store to play
MMM.
Legacy.
Oh, he's
just
getting
to-
worried. He wants to use his cards before he's not allowed to. He wants to get the value.
Exactly.
Exactly.
I know the feeling.
I just wanted to play the deck once. I got my 4-roll. I got my my store credit. I bought some standard cards. I was happy.
Yeah, I mean, now they've banned it. You already can say you played them once. You made a good move because it's happening.
I suppose if you're playing Initiative in order to get store credit to buy standard cards, I suppose the ends justify the means. I can't really criticize this. It's noble in a way.
Yeah.
All right.
We were talking about how mono white is the best deck in every format, and that's kind of funny.
Yeah, I mean,
Legacy.
that I think that has never happened. Like, I mean, it's not like the best deck in a standard, but almost. Like this week, it was blue white soldiers or mono white, right? Then it's like in modern, Hammer is one of the best decks, and it's a mono white deck. Pioneer, we don't talk about Pioneer today, so it doesn't count. But there's a tier one, tier 1 or 2. Like it's where it's weaker, but it's still good. And Legacy and Vintage is not close. Like it's the best deck or whatever. Like this is a great time to be a mono white gamer.
So all of the Commander players asking for better white cards. They say like be careful with what you wish, because now it's just, 1 year ago it felt like you had to play blue red, in all the formats in Magic. Mm-hmm. And with iteration or whatever, now it's like you have to play planes. Like planes seems to be like the best. What are Commander players complaining about now? Because I want to know what's going to be good.
Yeah, exactly. I want to know also. But it seems to me like
players
2023, you play planes, you win. That's it.
Yeah. Commander players right now are complaining about the Elish Norn, which happens to be white, and I think it also happens to be a very good card. It's a very good card, right?
Yeah. You remember kids when we were young that people joked about white being the worst color in Magic or whatever?
Don't even know if it was true most of the time, but yeah.
Maybe it was never like this. Like, the white is not close, like the best color in Magic right now by a lot. If you think all the formats together, it's not close. Like, there's no tie or anything. It's just like white is the best color by far.
Green, it's incredibly bad. I think
green is the worst color by far. I think white is the best. Then it's like blue, red, and green. Like Grixis and then
standard.
Green, I think.
So in standard and Pauper,
doesn't even exist.
In standard and Pauper, it's so unplayable. In modern, I thought about this recently because I wanted to actually write an article about this, like the ranking the colors. in modern, it all exists because of Charlotte's Agent and Outburst.
Yeah, it's not very good either.
And in Pioneer, I guess Mono Green it's a good deck, but it's because of Nykthos.
Yeah, it's a good deck, but it's not like it's not like Mono White in Legacy. It's just like a good deck and that's it.
Yeah. So it's green for sure right now.
Yeah, I think green is the worst. White is the clear best, and then Grixis, it's kind of a tier, but I will guess blue gets the edge because blue is still like the best in
so
Legacy Vintage or whatever.
In my idea of article, I would have put blue as the best color in Magic.
Wow, have you seen any results of the last 2 weeks, Mengu?
White. I think that in modern, the best decks are expressive iteration decks, like blue decks in general. In standard, I don't know, blue white. It's
literally all white. It's literally all white. Like
yeah, sure.
It's a mono-white deck.
Play slip out the back. In Legacy and Vintage, as much as White Initiative is good, overall, I think there's more blue decks than white decks. So.
I know about that. Definitely not in the top 8s. Like.
No, if you combine all the blue cards, it must be more than the white cards.
It doesn't matter if the white cards are
not in the
enough.
MOCS. The MOCS not close for sure. Where there's like 5 in the top 8 and then 1 show and tell and 1 Delver as a blue deck.
Yeah, it wasn't a MOCS though. It was just a challenge on Sunday.
Okay, I think. Okay, MOCS is this week also, by the way.
Yeah, the MOCS is this Sunday. Are you gonna play Legacy MOCS?
I am. Yeah.
Ooh. Okay.
I'm gonna try my very best to not play initiatives, but
You're
at
probably
this point.
going to.
I'm about to give up. Like I'm just I'm on the protection from white main deck creatures. I'm still losing to initiative situation right now, so I cannot promise I'm not gonna play it.
I lost a mirror match on the challenge where I played Mono White, where I played Archon of Absolution. My opponent played Sky Sovereign.
Yeah, I have one advice though for this weekend, which I'm gonna follow if I don't play initiative, is just don't play. I'm not gonna play if I play Delver or whatever. I'm not gonna play any kind of Pyroblast main deck. Like,
No.
Pyroblast is just banned from main deck play right now. Like the best deck and the most and best deck is like initiative. You could play a tournament where you play against 7 initiatives or whatever. Having a dead card against the best deck and most play deck is unacceptable. The same way Pyroblast is good if Delver is that deck. Now I'm definitely not gonna play like no Spell Pierce, no Pyroblast, nothing that's just like not decent or good against. I'm way closer to play like Grinding Volley or whatever that are pro white creatures which I'm playing already than to play Pyroblast right now. So that's where I am in Legacy.
Yeah, so on the opposite argument, if I was playing Mono White, I would still play Chalice of the Void, because I think that the reason why Mono White is good against blue is because of Chalice of the Void. So I would still play it, but maybe you can afford to cut Thalia, which isn't amazing. I mean, it's good. Obviously, it's good against blue, but I think you can cut her. So, and
you
it's
think
obviously
Thalia is
better
better
in the
than?
mirror match.
Do you think Thalia is better than Chalice? I'm sorry, Chalice is better than Thalia. That makes sense actually.
Against Delver, if you land the Chalice of the Void, you win the game.
Yeah, you win, and Thalia gets killed, and that's it. I agree.
Yeah, Thalia, I mean, it's good, but it's not that good.
But we're saying some versions like the. What's that?
Wait, so I mean, the logic is say if you're cutting it because it's not good in the mirror, what are you going to cut it for that is good in the mirror?
Well, there's
Once
a lot
Upon
of
a
good
Time.
cards. Yeah,
I would play Once Upon a Time.
Or you
for
can,
Thalia.
so the XE Cloud version, which is what Mag Winsauce also used to win the challenge with, is like no Thalia, no Chalice. Like they're just literally just full mirror. You look at the deck list, it's just full anti-mirror cards. I mean, they just won a tournament, you know. Mag Winsauce won a tournament with ephemerate main deck, you know, like it's just Source to Plowshares. Like, it's just like a very good mirror deck. And then the sideboard 3 Chalice of the Void and 2 Ballistas, but the rest is like, I don't know. This is the already. This might be the final version of the deck where it acknowledges the deck is so overpowered, or whatever, like so good that it just never wants to be like bad cards in the mirror. The same way Delver, when it was the best deck, it evolved into this version where everything was good in the mirror match and Pyroblasts were like good, and only Force of Will was there as like a testament to the other decks. And here it seems to me like Archon of Emeria is doing that. But it's the only card that you actually... I mean, it's not bad in the mirror the same way Foe is not bad in the Delver mirror, but it's not great. But the rest, I mean, Ephemerate is like the Pyroblasts, I feel, in this deck.
Yeah, no, I mean, for sure, his list is, legit. I'm not ever saying that, but I just still would play with Chalice of the Void because, like... The reason why I'm happy to play against Blue Red Delver with this deck is because of Chalice of the Void. So once I cut Chalice, I would be afraid to play against Delver. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, no. I mean, I definitely think this deck is considerably worse against Delver than the other one is, but also it's the same if like just playing Pyroblast and Delver. Like if you play a mirror match and you have Thalia and Chalice of the Void, and the other player does not have either. I mean, I'm pretty sure their deck list is like solidly ahead in the mirror match. Which at this point might be more like better EV than actually being good against the Delver deck. I think it will be close. But I think I agree with you, though, that Chalice is more impactful than Thalia. So if I had to pick one, I will pick Chalice, for sure.
Yeah. So overall, I think this weekend there will be the MOCS, and if Initiative keeps on putting such a stellar performance, they will definitely be taking action, because I think that, as much as Wizards doesn't like to ban Merc that region or Espresso Iteration, I think they don't really stick too much in defense of these Initiative cards. So I think something will happen for sure if this weekend continues the trend, which probably is going to happen.
I mean, it would be weird, right? I mean, like... The deck is just like as good, but we'll see. It's also like I don't like the Initiative. I think the gameplay is like very bad, but I think it's cool that we get some changes. So I mean, I'm just trying to see the bright side now, but the bright side is we never had a Legacy where Delver is not the best deck, where Pyroblast is like not correct to main deck or whatever. So I think that's at least an exciting like weekend in terms of like the deck building or whatever, like trying to build a deck with enough like pro white or anti mono white cards. while still being functional against Delver. I think that is the only like bright side of Initiative, and I mean something some people might enjoy as well.
Okay, so this weekend, outside of the Legacy Showcase, there's also going to be the Vintage Showcase. And as much as we don't really talk about Vintage on the podcast, it is a competitive Magic podcast, so it's definitely an event that it's going to have probably around 200 people. So it is definitely something. It's going to be a big event. So for those of you who don't follow Magic Online, there's the MOCS, which is this prestigious 8-people tournament, and you qualify through various ways, and one of them is by winning one of these MOCS finals. You have 4. This time they are Pioneer, Modern, Legacy, which are like the big events, the big formats, and then you have and then they rotate between Vintage, Pauper, and Standard, and this month happened to be Vintage. So that is how the Magic Online system works, let's say.
Yeah, I mean, this weekend, like for Vintage, I'm not that sure. I think it's a similar situation where Mono White is like the best deck and the most played deck, same as Legacy, but it is a little bit trickier because as opposed to Legacy, I don't think Vintage Initiative is like the best deck by a lot. Like if you try to beat Initiative in Legacy, probably chances are you're not, actually, because the Legacy is so much better than the rest. But in Vintage, if you try to beat Initiative, you will beat Initiative. So I think it's going to be like way more interesting in terms of like what happens, but I definitely will be careful with like the Pyroblasts or whatever. It's like,
so if you remember what I told you, I think it was last episode, is that I played Initiative in both Vintage and Legacy, and as much as I did well in Vintage, I went 10th place, but I didn't really feel like the deck was as good as it was in Legacy, and so I think that in Vintage it might still be the most popular deck, but I don't think there's necessarily how do you say, like, this doesn't mean necessarily that it's the best deck or that you should necessarily build your deck for it. So I think main deck Flusterstorm, main deck Pyroblast are still maybe accepted in Vintage, but they aren't in Legacy. That's what I was trying to say.
They might be fine, but also like small numbers. Like I don't think it's bad to play like 2 Pyroblast, 1 Fluster, or whatever. But I think the days of 3 Flusterstorm, 3 Pyroblast main deck, or 4 and 3, they're gone right now.
Yeah, for sure.
And that would be the big takeaway for Eternal this weekend for me. Like I will be careful with those things. Yeah.
The biggest change I think that happened to Vintage is that the return of Oath of Druids, which is good against the Initiative. The creature of choice is Serra's Emissary, which can name creatures, and then the Mono White deck just dies because it's not a legend. So.
I felt that. I played like one challenge with Initiative, and it was quite good. I think I went 4-2 or whatever, but one game I went like the opponent goes like Land MOCS Oath, and I'm like, well, I don't think I can win this game like ever. Yeah. Nope.
Yeah, I was playing in my list of in my Vintage list. I was playing Cathar Commando. And I was playing Containment Priest, but obviously, like, they're pretty easy card to deal with.
Yeah, but they're still good. I think Priest is a very good one to play in the sideboard of Initiative, like for this weekend. Like, if I play Initiatives with, I will try not to, but I might. I think Containment Priest is a very good answer to Oath. Oath is also like relying on Oath to sort of deal with the creatures, so they're not like very rich in removal. So Priest is like Land MOCS Priest can actually just end the game on the spot.
And the list of Janara has 12 Planeswalkers. That's a lot of Planeswalkers.
That's a lot. Yeah, I think that's too many, but I mean, who knows?
He's playing with 1 Narset because it's restricted, 2 Minskamboo, 4 Oko, 2 Dak Faden, 3 Ren and 6.
Yeah, I think this deck is relying too much in Oath of Druids. Like, if you don't draw Oath of Druids, and you don't have the many manipulation spells to get them, I think the walkers. I mean, the issue with playing too many walkers is if they are bad, they are almost all bad, with Minskamboo being the exception. Like, they just go turn 1 Initiative, whatever, turn 1 creature, and they just like, they're just all suck. Like, you can never play Walker because they're gonna die. The way Initiative works, it's always a 5/5, which is gonna like kill all your walkers on 1 hit, even Oko, whatever. So I'm not a big fan of how this deck is constructed, but I do think, regardless, like, Oath is just like very good. And I'm a big fan of Ren and 6 in Vintage, but I think it's not at its best now because of the basic planes being the best card in Magic in 2023. But other than that, I think Oath is very well positioned for the weekend.
Yeah, usually Oath plays black with Demonic Tutor and Vamp, but this list is just Steamer, so no Vamp or Demonic Tutor.
Yeah. We'll see. We'll see what happens in the MOCS, but I expect some adaptation. I think in Vintage, the metagame has tools to adapt to Initiative, and Initiative, it looks to me like it's just going to stay there as another good deck in the same workshops or whatever, Dredge or other Bazaar decks. It looks to me like it's fine in terms of power level, even though it might be the best deck. But if it is, it might be not also, but if it is, it's just not by a lot. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, so just a super brief window on the format of the people.
Alchemy? Yeah, true. Thank you, Mengu. I'm glad you mentioned that. You
have to examine that format quite thoroughly.
Yeah, Mengu, I'm glad you brought the format of the people. So this is the moment. Yes.
It was actually great because I heard Mengu say, I was so delighted when Mengu said, well, we are a competitive Magic podcast, so I guess we'll cover, this niche format Vintage, that we'll have to talk about it because there's a big tournament coming up. And I was like, oh, you're going to regret saying that in a couple of minutes. You're really going to regret that. Because
you see, the Anthony's needles are always they're always there present, Mengu, right?
Yep. The scheme is coming.
All right. I'll give the podcast microphone to you, Anthony. What is the format of the people this week?
What do you mean this week? It's always the format of the people. Alchemy is the format of the people. And okay, but for real though, I know people don't love it, but I think that's what makes it important for us to talk about it because it is the format of the arena qualifier this weekend, and I think a lot of people will want to be interested in qualifying. I mean, those qualifiers are really good value. Like if you do well enough, you qualify for both the Paper Pro Tour and an arena championship. It's like 2 PDQs at once, and so they're well worth playing it. But the thing is, people don't really know that much about Alchemy because, okay, let's be real. Like most competitive players don't play it ever. So, but that's also a lot of opportunity, right, Javier?
Yeah, it's it's a brewer's paradise. I think I don't have a super deep knowledge of Alchemy. I have played a little bit, but it is just no one does. So it's a good format to if you just look at the Alchemy cards and you pick one you like a lot, like Rusko or whatever. There's some cards that are just broken or they look like they're broken. If you feel like a deck can actually be very good, just go for it and build it because having a brew that's good, it's gonna make your opponents very lost when they play against it. And if you fail to do so, my advice is just to pick a standard deck you play well with and just morph into Alchemy because every single standard good deck, Mono White, Soldiers, Grixis or whatever, they all have at least 1 or 2 pretty good cards from Alchemy that actually improve the decks a lot. And I think that's a good opportunity to try that. It's not there's not only no deck list, but also there's no established metagame. You can just play against a few different decks in some matches. And there's every PTQ, every tournament there's Alchemy. There's some people that actually kind of break it. I don't exactly remember, but last time there was this Goblin Pathfinder or whatever. There's always a lot of space for deck building. And in a format like Legacy or whatever, building a new deck, it happens, but it's very hard for it to be better than playing the Initiative or Delver. But here, it's actually the opposite. If you feel you're going to be good because this card, plays so well with this, I think it's a good opportunity. And you don't need to test a lot because as long as it works and it's functional, your opponent will also have an idea about what's going on. They will have a weak sideboarding or whatever. So I think it's a very good opportunity for deck builders there. So I recommend the experience also.
It's actually quite strange. It seems really ironic because the whole concept of Alchemy was that it was meant to be the format of the future where adapting to the technology of that we have now as opposed to what's possible in paper. But Alchemy competitively really feels like it's a throwback to decades past where everything is very low information and there's a lot more emphasis on building a good deck that people don't expect. Might have been the case 20 years ago or whatever, as opposed to now where there's people are more familiar with what the good decks are, but you just have to tune it really well.
It's funny, right?
Great, but you have to tune it. But Alchemy is it's back to 20 years ago where I don't know, this guy comboed this card with this card. I didn't even know what the second one did. And I died, I think. Yeah. I'm not sure what's going on.
Sometimes I play cards and you have to read them because you have an idea, the play this card, you're wow. So
it's
this
really
is a real goblin?
In a way, Alchemy is one of the most old school formats right now. So,
It is actually. It is.
Yeah.
It is. Ironically enough, it is actually. It feels like when you went to the store and you had like there was like that much internet or whatever, and you will have no idea about what was going on, and you just couldn't Google it because it didn't exist. Like you just can. Sometimes I play Alchemy decks and you're like, what? And I think that's cool, and it's cool that we're playing like a decent tournament with that, with that premise. So I think it's good.
Yeah.
All right. So that's from other people. I recommend, like if you have a brew and I think it's good, go for it. That would be my advice for
just
the
look
Alchemy.
at the spoilers, and pick something and run with it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, as long as you can ladder beat, and if it works for you, I think that's enough to win tournaments, because it's not like a standard where you go like, because ladder is like low level because the good players they test and then they will be in a tournament. It's like no one like has a grasp on like solving the format. Like it doesn't happen. Everyone has their thoughts, and I think that's good. So if a brew works for you, it could be just good enough to win the whole tournament. I think last tournament, it was Pascal, I think the last time the Alchemy qualifier or whatever. I think I saw some deck lists that were like, wow, I mean, I wish I had like something like this. Is just like they broke it. There's some cards that feel like that. So yeah, I think it's fun, and go for it. And we also can go now to the Mango, we're giving back the microphone to you.
Yeah, you can talk about your circle format of the people.
So I was just browsing through the list of the format of the true format of the people Pauper, and there's very few MonoRed actually. I mean, I've been calling for MonoRed Burn to be like the best format by far. Although, it maybe not. It maybe not be this weekend. Didn't perform that well. Although, personally, I went to my local league on Thursday, and I went 4-0, so best deck confirmed.
Deck confirmed. Yeah. 2-4-0. That's 2 4-0s in 1 week.
Almost as good as
that's true.
leagues,
that's undefeated, Mango. Yeah,
that's true. So again, I mentioned it at the beginning, but on Friday I'll go to this big event in Italy, Trieste. It's going to be a big Pauper event. I'll play MonoRed. Pretty excited. I think the deck is excellent. Well, I have 4 Relic of Progenitus. That is my tech for the blue-black snake and
luck deck.
Gurmag Angler. Yeah, serpent.
Is MonoRed a luck deck, Mango, by the way?
Is MonoRed a luck deck? Yeah. I mean, Pauper would say that all the top decks right now, I guess Affinity is a skill deck. Yeah, MonoRed is a luck deck. Yeah.
It is. Like, okay, thank you.
I'm also playing a very cool tech that I suggest is Mind Collapse. Do you know what it does?
No.
This is the one where you sack a mountain if they shoot something?
Exactly. It's free because you sack a mountain, you kill a Gurmag, or you pay the word cost and kill a Tolerant Terror.
Okay, the removal from Modern Horizons. Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. I think that's the best option. I mean, I was thinking about Magmatic Sinkhole, but I think Mind Collapse is better.
That's cool.
But yeah, I'm ready. I'm very ready to.
Sweet.
And hopefully, you can win a dual lands. You can win like the whole top 8.
Dual lands, dual lands means like Savannah, Scrubland, Underground Sea type of dual lands, like actual dual lands.
Yeah. Like,
oh, that's cool.
As far as I know, if there's 128 players, there's 8 dual lands in prize. I don't know, maybe more. I haven't checked
that's
very
good
well.
Though. That's a strong pricing.
Look,
actually, 10 dual lands. Yeah,
you said like the real dual lands or whatever, but the way we've been seeing the cards going, the way the colors are changing, and how how things are going. Maybe at some point you'll be like, I want a Savannah. I don't want your crappy Tundra.
Exactly.
Just give it a couple of years.
I mean, Tundra is white though, so it's still time.
That's true. But you want the premium ones like
the time for Volcanic Cannon is gone. It is now Plateau time.
Yep.
Plateau, yeah. I played, All right, we're ready to wrap it up. Anything more to say?
No, I'm gonna say like in the last challenge, there's more plateaus than Underground Seas in the top 8. So maybe the time is already now. There's one Underground Sea in the top 8, and there's like 4 Volcanic Islands and 4 plateaus. So plateau is already there's more Volcanic Islands. So all Underground Sea is behind plateau.
Okay.
All right.
Well, it's been fun as always. We'll be back next week with more competitive Magic. Thank you all for listening.
Also, a trophy from Mango's house in Trieste. So we hope you can take it down, Mango.
That's true. I'll be battling it out this weekend. Excited. And we'll report back to you next week. Thank you for listening.
Thanks for listening. As always,
Cheers.
feedback on our Twitters, and if it's bad feedback on Mingo09. And yeah, thanks for listening, everyone.
Bye.
Ciao.
Bye-bye. Ciao.